Hi everyone, welcome back to my channel. Today I have a story that is about my mom and witchcraft. We don't do witchcraft, we don't condone it, that kind of thing, but I just wanted to tell you this interesting story. So grab a snack and let's begin. So, my mom really wanted to get stronger at Spanish. She wasn't very good at conversational Spanish, didn't wanted to get a little bit better at it. My grandfather spoke Spanish, but when you're raised in America, it's just you go to school, they speak English, so it was not a thing that she always practiced every day. So, he even sent my mother and my aunt to Mexico for the summer to learn conversational Spanish, just to get better. But okay, so my grandfather would go to Mexico for like a month, a couple times, maybe once a year, to visit his family and help his sister build her house or do add-ons, things like that. He was provided for her. She was a single mom, so he was there in Mexico one day and was walking through the streets, and it was a small town. And he sees people walking out of this one house, just carrying out furniture and just walking to their houses. Furniture, chairs, things like that, lamps. And so he went up and asked what was going on. And he was told that the woman had died and she had no relatives, so they were just taking her items. So, they just said, hey, but they think she was a witch, she kept to herself, that kind of thing. So, my grandfather was curious to see what was in the house, and he always loved to go to antique stores and go pick up old stuff. So he definitely just walked in and just took a look around, and he wasn't interested in the furniture or anything like that, but he did find a book, and it was a journal. And it was this kind that don't have lines in it, this blank pages, and it was a really old outside cover book, and it was like a journal, so he saw writing in it on every page. So he thought, well, this is a good practice for my oldest daughter to read Spanish. So he took the book and brought it back, gave it to my mom, and she started to read it. She would read it at night, and my mom's an avid reader, and definitely was enjoying trying to understand what was being said on the pages. So she would even do translations. So she would to understand it better, she would try and write it in English on a separate piece of paper. So she started to notice, now she was a teenager, okay, so she still went to high school. And so she would notice here and there just weird things happening, where she was with my dad, and they were at the lockers outside, and the locker area was right next to a chain link fence, and then it was a busy road. So her locker happened to be right there by that busy road. So she was there talking to my dad, who she was dating at the time, and she had that feeling that somebody was watching her. So she glanced over, and there was a fire hydrant on the street outside on the sidewalk, and she saw and this is probably about a week after my grandfather had brought her that book. So she noticed that there was a woman sitting down on that fire hydrant, just staring at her, and had no expression, just completely, kind of creepy. So just staring at her, and she was dressed kind of I guess a peasant woman, in those days where they would wear the white shirt and then a shawl over it, and a skirt and some sandals. And she, told my dad, she's like, there's a woman staring at me, and it's weird. She's just staring and no emotion, nothing. And my dad turned around, he saw her, and he goes, that's weird. He's like, well, don't pay attention to her. She's just some crazy old lady probably. And so that was that, right? So the next time she was walking home, when she saw this, she was walking with some girlfriends, and at one particular street, they would all say goodbye. One would go this way, the other would go the opposite way, and my mom would go this way, right? So at this crossroads right here, they said goodbye. They were going to, and my mom starts to walk away, and she turns around to wave to them, and she sees that woman standing at the street back here. So just staring at her again. And this is it wasn't the same day. It was another day had gone by, and she told her friends, hey, come here. And she tells them the story about seeing her outside the school. And then she says, now she's looking at me again. Like, who is that lady? They're like, oh my God, she's creepy. Like, we don't want to know. They laughed about it, and they just said, oh, don't worry, she's probably just some crazy lady, same thing, kind of thing. And so my mom just went home, that kind of thing, did her thing. And, this wasn't like an everyday kind of thing. Like, time would go by, and then, she would notice her again. So my grandfather would work graveyard shifts sometimes, or he would work really late into the night and come home like 1 o'clock in the morning, 2 o'clock in the morning, that kind of thing. So he, in the house that they lived in, it was, the houses were old, and a lot of the old houses had their windows where it was set up high. It wasn't, you can walk up to your window and it was like where your waist is, that's the beginning of the window, and then it would go higher. So the windows were only probably about a foot to 2 feet high, and they were long. They were super long. Sometimes they could stretch the whole length of the bedroom. And like maybe just the center would open just a small piece, like it wouldn't be the whole piece. So my mom, in order for her to look out, she would look out at night. Like, she would wait for my grandfather to come home from his shift. She would wait for him like on a Friday night. And in order for her to look out her window, she had to step on the headboard of her bed. She had a twin bed in there. So she would read her book and would turn off the lights, because we were always taught never look out the window with the lights on in the house when it's dark outside, because you can't see really well outside. So my mom would read a little bit and then turn off her light and stand on her bed and just open her curtains. And so the curtains were really short too, because they were made for the window. And she would look out the window and just kind of look around and just see if she would see his car coming, that kind of a thing. And she'd stay there for a few minutes, and then she would get back down and then read her book. So this was happening, she said for a good hour and a half. She said she was doing this, like she'd read a little bit, try to translate, that kind of thing. And, she did say she noticed that the book was, it wasn't like a Dear Diary. And she noticed that it was, when she was putting things together, and she would explain, every time my grandfather would be like, hey, did you read your book today? That kind of a thing. She would say, yeah, I did notice that it seems like it spells. And she's like, should I still keep reading this book? And he was like, oh, don't worry about it. You're not, as long as you're not practicing that, it should be okay. So my mom was reading this, translating it into English. And so when you're reading this, you're saying it in your mind, or you're saying it with your mouth. You're saying these words. So, she'd seen that woman a few times, and it was getting kind of creepy. And so this is the night she's waiting for my grandfather, and she would look out, like I said. But across the street, diagonally across, was a street lamp. And in those days, the street lamps were an amber color, kind of like an orangey, kind of a pinkish color. It wasn't a very strong light, it was just a soft glow. And so she was, and this is after midnight, and she's looking out, and she's waiting for my grandfather to come home again, just waiting, and she just wanted to greet him. And she noticed that there was a young lady running across the street under the light. So my mom was thinking, oh, she's probably running home from a dance, like maybe she's late to get home, something like that. And my mother said she looked so graceful, and because the amber lights, they can change the color of your clothes, like something can look, a different color. So maybe the girl was wearing all white, something like that. And she said she could see her hair just flowing, and just every time she ran, it was just a very soft bounce to the hair. And it was in slow motion. It was just a very slow run, and she was just a really small. She was a really small woman, petite, and she had the skirt was up to her knees. And my mom was looking at her very intently, because she thought, wait a minute, you can't see the bottom of her legs. You can't see from her knees down. I mean, you could see it in the skirt, the formation of the thighs as she's running, but she couldn't see below the knees. And so she was really looking and trying to think, well, maybe it's the light. Maybe the light is just, the casting a shadow, whatever. And the girl just stopped right under the light. And her hair just kind of flew, swished forward, and she just stayed very stiff for a few seconds. And my mom thought, well, what's going on with this girl? And she slowly turned and pivoted and stared right at my mom. And my mom ducked down and got a little embarrassed that she got caught just watching this girl. So she thought, oh my gosh, how embarrassing. And she stayed crouched on her bed for a few minutes. She stayed down there and she thought, okay, I'm gonna let her get her bearings and then just let her go back to where she was going. So my mom stayed down there and got like she said, she was trying to wait it out. She said she waited a couple minutes and then she got back on top of the frame of her bed and opened up the curtains, and the woman was right outside her window, looking right at her, face to face. And if my mom had to stand on the foot of her bed to look out the window because the windows were so high, what was the girl standing on to look inside my mom's window? There was nothing. My mom didn't even have a bush out there. They had little flowers and that was it. So my mom screamed and fell off the bed and just rolled onto the floor. She screamed and couldn't stop screaming. And my grandmother woke up, my aunt, my uncle, they came into the room and they were, asking her, what's the matter, shaking her, and she couldn't catch her breath. And my uncle slapped her to calm her down, just to get her back into reality, because it just scared her so bad. They couldn't get her to calm down. And at this time, when they're screaming at her, my grandfather came home. And so he came into all this, craziness, and it was around 2:00 in the morning. So he's like, what is going on? What are you guys doing awake? What's happening? And they start, saying, explaining what was happening to my mom. And then he got her a glass of water with sugar in it just to calm her down again, sugar water. And every Hispanic does that. They give you sugar water to calm down. But so they calmed her down and she caught her breath, and she was, like I said, hysterical and crying. And when she finally calmed down, she told the story of like what she saw and the girl across the street. And everybody got scared at that point when they thought, well, how was she outside that window? Was she floating outside that window? That's unheard of. And when my my grandfather started to backtrack and say, okay, well, tell me, what were you doing at that particular time? She's like, well, I was reading that book that you got me, and I would stand outside the window and look and wait for you, and then I would go back to reading it. And he said, okay, is anything else happening? Had anything happened in this time frame? And she said, well, I did notice, and she, this lady, and she told him the stories about her seeing this lady with jet black hair, parted down the middle, just pulled down straight, and dressed like, a peasant woman. And she wouldn't say anything, that kind of thing. And she said, I'd get like the chills. I'd get really nervous when I saw her. And so he looked at the book. He really didn't read the book when he grabbed it. He just kind of like skimmed through it and just thought, oh, I'll take it to my daughter, when he first had that plan. But he started opening the book and he looked and saw that, and once he read it, he saw that, yeah, these are probably some powerful spells. And you're probably, what's the word? Like bringing the spirit back of this woman. These were her writing, okay? So it's her essence in those words on that page. It is a piece of her soul, literally on those pages. So kind of like, I guess, a Horcrux from Harry Potter. A piece of his soul is in each thing. And I'm a firm believer also in people's jewelry that's handed down to other people. A piece of their soul is on there. Like you can literally hold on to that jewelry and you can see a piece of like the last minutes of their lives or how they died, that kind of a thing. So it is true. I've tried it before. So I definitely believe that the woman was being like resurrected in a sense, like her soul was being called back to my mom. Just like they say, you definitely can call back, if you think about your loved ones. If you think about them, you say their name, or even if you have like a memory of them, you can either see them in a dream, that kind of thing. Of course, it's not a good thing for this, it's not a good thing that this woman was trying to come back. I think she just wanted to also see who it was that was conjuring her, I guess you can say. I guess it was a bit of witchcraft without my mom knowing what she was doing by just reading the book. And my grandfather was pretty, for my grandfather to do this, it was pretty serious. So what he said is, grab the book and we're going to go and burn this book, but you need to burn it because I gave this to you. So they went outside and they started lighting the book, and it caught fire real quick because it was an old book, and it just, caught flames really quick out on the cement. And the flames were blue. They were not like an orange or yellow kind of flame, or even red. It was a blue flame, a whitish bluish flame. So it was kind of creepy that they saw this. And I mean, it burned down to nothing. It literally burned down to nothing. It just left a dark spot on the cement. And I know it's a paper and that kind of thing, but I mean, I don't know. I've never seen anything like that. I mean, literally the ashes were just like nothing. They just disintegrated. And it was just, like I said, a black spot. So this has happened to me before when I found a book. My aunt, one of her daughter-in-laws had left it in her shed. It was a Wiccan book, and it was printed here in the United States. And I was just curious about it. And I'd heard it was a religion. So I was just curious on what this book, what it entailed. So I started reading the book to see like what it is that, they would believe in. So I never just made the spells. I read one of the spells on like, I guess money or something like that, career, but I just never did them. But I just was curious on, finished the book, and I thought, okay, well, I understand the Wiccan religion, I guess. But I started to see things, at night also. So I just thought, okay, it's not good that I read those kind of things. I mean, I'm sure it kind of just opens up your third eye also. So I'm sure that's the reason why my mom was able to kind of see this woman as well. So it's kind of good to kind of stay away from those things. Definitely don't want to get yourself mixed up with that. But after they burned that book, my mom never saw anything again. But I mean, it's just kind of curious when you read those books. It's kind of like, is that person attached to you, that kind of a thing. I always wondered because at one point when I was little, we took a trip to Mexico, and it was my grandmother, my brother, my mom, and myself, and I was only about 5 or 6, and I remember waking up in the middle of the night, and I didn't know where I was, after you wake up in a strange, you're in a hotel. So I was sitting with my mom, and I could see her profile, and I thought to myself, that doesn't look like my mom. And to me, it looked like a witch, like the kind you see with the big, long, pointy nose. But I remember staring at her, and I thought, this is not my mom. It was just strange. So I feel like maybe something was tied in as we were going into Mexico. Maybe, I don't know. It's kind of weird, but my mom's normal, and my mom's never done any witchcraft, so we're all good. Just wanted to share that story with you. Just be careful what you're reading. If someone's handwritten a book, be careful what you read. So, all right, guys, thanks for joining me today. Thanks. Have a good one. Bye-bye.